for the past 6 months, I haven't been checking email myself. Rather, I've been relying on an AI agent to do it for me. It's been checking my email, triaging it into ones that I should see versus ones that I should ignore. And when it thinks I should respond to something, it tries to draft an email for me or schedule an event for me, or it asks me a question if it's not sure what to do or how to respond. So here you can see the agent inbox, which is what I call where this AI agent communicates to me. And this is primarily how I've been using and interacting with email for the past 6 months. In this video, I'm going to show how you can set it up, no code needed, and then how you can use it to respond and communicate with this AI email assistant. Let's dive in. The first thing we need to do is log in to the agent inbox. Note that this is not actually setting up the agent for us. It is just logging in to this agent inbox where we can communicate with it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. After I log in, I'll notice that's pretty empty. That's because I haven't created the email agent yet. So in order to do that, I'm going to go over to settings here. I'm going to click on it and I'm going to click create assistant. It's then going to bring me to this page where I can configure the email assistant that I'm going to use. There's a few different parameters that we need to configure for this email assistant to be able to do its job well. First, we need to tell it who we are. So I'm going to type in my email here. Then I'm going to type in my full name here. My first name, or what I like to commonly use here. I'm going to add some background about myself so they know who I am. And now I'm going to tell it how I want it to behave and what I want it to do. So first, I'm going to tell it my preferences for scheduling meetings. So I'm just going to use the default ones here. Background preferences are general information that it might find useful, like important people, places, or things. So I'm going to say something like, my co-founder is Ankush. Next are response preferences. So when this is responding to users, what type of content should it include? So note that this is not the tone that we want the email to respond to. That'll come later. This is the content that we want it to include. And so not a ton here, but I'll use the default. I'll set my time zone. And here is where I set how I want the tone to be. So I'm going to add some basic instructions. Don't sound like an AI. And then some cases you want to sound more formal. Some cases you want to sound less formal. Finally, I'm going to tell it how to triage emails. So instructions for which emails should be ignored. And so I'm going to use the defaults. Instructions for which emails should notify me, but not try to draft a response, just notify me that they exist. So things like DocuSign, where I need to sign it. This can't do it yet. It's just going to notify me that I have something that I need to sign. And then finally, which emails it should try to respond to. And so this is going to be everything that I want it to take a stab at responding to. After that, I have an option to turn on memory. So memory is still experimental. It's not fully fleshed out, but the basic idea is that when you interact with it, and we'll cover how you interact with it later on, but when you interact with it, it will learn from those interactions and start to improve. Ingest sense is how many days worth of emails you want to backfill. This is a one-time job. It just runs at the start, and it will basically run over all emails in the past, however long you choose, and try to triage and optionally respond to them. So I'm going to choose 2 days. Now I'm going to authorize it. This is going to bring us to a separate page. The authorization will be using Arcade AI behind the scenes. This is a separate startup that handles auth for agents. You'll notice that at this point, Google hasn't verified this app. This is something Arcade still needs to do. I trust them. You don't have to. If you don't want to do this, there will be a separate video that shows how you can set up and run this open source. You will need to code, and you will have to have OpenAI keys and Anthropic keys and all of that. I trust Arcade AI, so I'm going to do this. Great, I've authorized my app. I can now close this, and I'm going back to my inbox. So it's kicked off a job that's in the background, is going to look at all emails in the past 2 days and try to respond to them. So it'll take a little bit to run. And so I'll wait, and then I'm going to come back here. All right, we can see that we're back and we've got a lot of emails that require my attention. Now you might be thinking, hey, didn't I just hire an agent to do this? Why do I still need to interact with it so much? This agent has a very high emphasis on keeping the human, you, in the loop. And I think that's really important. Imagine if you just hired a human EA to look after your emails. When they get started, you would want to be in the loop. You would want them to ask you questions as they're doing their job. They're not going to know how to respond to the things right off the bat. They're going to need some guidance. When they're writing an email, you might want to make sure that it's in your tone if they're drafting it for you, and you're going to want to look at that. And so just like a human EA will require interactions with you, so will this AI agent. The expectation is not that this is fully autonomous. It's doing its job, but it's reaching out to you when it needs help, or when we've programmed it to, which is when it tries to send something. We still want to keep the human in the loop. And the reason for that is the second thing, memory. So as I mentioned, I turned on memory for this. Memory will only work if I interact with it. Imagine a human EA that's doing their job. If they don't ask me how I like to respond to certain emails, and if I don't tell them, always respond to Ankush, my co-founder, or something like that, they might not recognize my preferences. They might recognize basic things, right? Like, oh, this is spam, I shouldn't do anything there. But they're not going to know who my friends are, who I want to respond to, who I want to ignore, when I want to schedule meetings, whether I like the morning or afternoon better. And so I need to communicate all of that to a human EA. And so I also need to communicate all of that to my AI agent. So I'm going to go over some of the common patterns of communication that I do for this email assistant and why they're so important. I can look at a specific item by clicking into it. Here, I can see that Rocky is asking me if I want to participate in an agent's hackathon. My email agent doesn't know if I want to do this. I do want to do this, but I actually have friends that are in town. That's not on my calendar. My calendar is my work calendar. I don't have friends in my town on my calendar. So there's no way that this agent or a human EA would know that. And so I'm going to say something like, I would love to, but sadly I have friends in town. And here I'm responding to the AI agent. And you can see this because this is type question. It's asking me a question. So I'm going to send this response to the AI agent. And I can see it start to work here. It's doing more things. This is giving me some indication of what's happening. And then here, now, it's drafted an email. And I can see this because this has changed to response email draft. So I can see here that it's drafted an email to Rocky. Hi, Rocky, I appreciate the invitation, blah, 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 but I have prior commitments. So there's a few things I can do here. The most common things are edit or accept this. So I can accept this directly as is, or I can edit it directly. So I could say something like, I would love to, instead of whatever it had before. A second thing I could do if I wanted to is I could respond to my EA. So rather than modifying it directly, I could tell the EA to respond in a more colloquial term or something like that. So let's do, be more casual in your response. Here we can see that it drafted a new email. It wasn't actually that colloquial. We'll work on that. But you get the idea. You can communicate either by editing it directly or by responding to the agent. So I like this, so I'm going to accept this. It's going to run. It's going to actually send that email for me. And then when it's done, it's going to bring me back here. Let's see another email. You can see here that I have a bill for Meter, which we use for internet. Now there's a few things I can do here. Notice that this is notify. So it's not actually asking me any questions. So there's nothing for me to directly respond to. It's just notifying me of this. I could respond to it. I could say draft an email or something like that if I wanted it to take actions. Usually what I do for these types of things is do one of these two things up here. Mark as resolved or ignore. Mark as resolved is intended to communicate that I have done this offline. Ignore ignores this email, and if I'm using memory, it'll update memory to use this type of email as an example of what to ignore in the future, so it doesn't even get shown to me. So that's the key difference. Both of them will remove this from the agent inbox entirely. Mark as resolved is basically saying, hey, this is actually a good email, keep it up. I want to see things like this in the future. Ignore is saying this is a bad email, I do not want to see this. So for things like this, I don't actually need to see this, so I'm going to click ignore. And it's going to bring me back to the agent inbox. I want to show one more thing, which is scheduling emails. So here, I'll click into this. This is an email from myself that I just sent as a test dummy one or from one of my other accounts. So I'm going to ask my email assistant, set up a meeting next Thursday, whenever. And I'm going to send that. And so here I can see what's going on under the hood. And I can see that it's actually doing a bunch of things. And one of the things it's doing is checking my calendar and seeing when I'm free. So it drafted an email saying when I'm free next Thursday. I actually wanted to schedule a calendar invite directly, so I'm just going to say, just schedule it directly. It's done some work, and I can see now that it's drafted a calendar invite that I could send. Just like the email, I can modify these directly, or I can accept it down below. So that's how you communicate with this AI agent. If it shows you something, you can remove it from the agent inbox by saying either mark as resolved or ignore. Ignore will communicate to the agent that you don't want to see things like this in the future, or mark as resolved basically communicates, hey, I did this offline, but this is a good thing. It can ask you questions if it doesn't know how to deal with something, just like a human EA would, and you can respond to it. Based on that, it may try to draft an email or schedule a calendar event. When it does that, you can approve it directly, you can edit it directly in this agent inbox, or you can respond to the agent and tell it to modify it in some way. I've been using this for the past 6 months. It's definitely not perfect. There's sometimes I have to go in and manually type out emails, sometimes it messes up the calendar and I have to check it, but by and large, it saved me a lot of time. It's always on, it's always running in the background, and it highlights things when it's most important for me to see it. If you're interested in trying it out, you can check the link below. Thanks for watching.